Good afternoon, everybody. What a great summit so far. I can't believe it's almost over. I want to build on what so many people here have been talking about over the past couple of days. You know, I'm really inspired by the futurism, by the history, by what we're doing today. And, you know, one thing I've been thinking about is how we're some of the last generations to have the opportunity to save land. And I'm wondering what we do next, because thanks to the work of so many people in this room and people on the climate panel this morning, you know, I think people are going to be living in the Sarasota-Manatee area in 50 to 75 years. And so we're going to need some solutions that we can still do in these urbanized environments. So understanding how to enhance ecosystem services will become even more important than it is today in 50 to 75 years. Right now in our urban areas, we're losing out on a lot of the ecosystem services that we depend on. A lot of folks will talk about these ecosystems being things that nature provides for free, but that's a dangerous proposition. They aren't free. And when we talk about them as free, that's when they're devalued. That's when we don't compare them well to other options that we have. So these trade-offs that the Urban Ecology panel was talking about, those are how we value these services. So we need to think about how we can market these services to sell green alternatives to different kinds of decision makers. So that's everyone from an elected official to a developer to a policymaker and a homeowner. So we need to think about how we can quantify these ecosystem services, which are usually really large. So we're thinking about big mangrove systems. We need to think about, if we shrink them down, can we still quantify services that those things provide? And so what I want to do is use living shorelines as an example of how scientists across the country are starting to do this. So although their square footage can be really small, living shorelines are mighty. They pack really valuable ecosystem services into small and usually pretty fragmented packages. So there's some exciting science coming out on this. For example, in 2016, there was a study that came out living shorelines in the northeastern United States. And they found that fish diversity and abundance in those sites was greater than in both bulkheaded areas and even in their natural marsh controls, which I think is a really interesting thing about structure that Ryan may have mentioned. Also, we're seeing that they're a little bit more resilient to hurricanes. For example, Hurricane Irene coming through North Carolina, 76% of the bulkheads in that area were damaged, whereas the scientists observed very little damage to the coastal and natural areas, including the living shorelines. So many local governments are already investing in strategies to reduce risks from coastal hazards. That includes our local governments here in Sarasota-Manatee. In many areas around the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of those funds are going toward gray infrastructure that degrade ecosystems. So the good news is that smart people are working on how to shift that gray to green. And this figure is from a recent 2018 study that demonstrated that nature-based solutions to coastal hazard risks in the Gulf of Mexico alone could save more than $50 billion in flood damages just over the next 20 years, which is, you know, not actually a very long period of time. And the same study calculated that wetland and oyster reef restoration can have benefit to cost ratios that are greater than 7 to 1. Oh, my goodness, 30 seconds. Okay, so they can be a lot more cost effective than doing these more artificial solutions. And as much as I love talking about fish and mangroves, they're a great way to hook people into these kinds of solutions. However, I think we need to get toward you know, the things that people are really thinking about when they're making these more decisions about more expensive infrastructure on their properties. So we're talking about aesthetics, about erosion, about coastal hazards, and again about money. And so that's not only the cost of the project, but also the time cost. So you know, time is money, and we may need to be helping and assisting these people a lot more than we are today with how to get more natural shoreline solutions into the ground. So that's all I had to talk to you about today. And, you know, there's a lot of great people in this room working on this subject. I'm hoping to get us all together talking about it even more than we are. So please contact me if you're interested. And thank you very much.